Hey, hello there, and welcome to Talking with Tony. Once again, now on YouTube and backed by popular demand. Today, our West Coast correspondent on Talking with Tony, Bryan Lundquist, joins us. You might remember he was with us a couple of weeks ago. He's very excited. The Braves were in his town, they were in San Francisco. And Bryan, you were able to see a W. Since then, the Braves have clinched their division. And for all intent and purposes, they have home field advantage wrapped up. Yes, mathematically, the Dodgers could catch them, but the Dodgers won't. So your Braves, even though they haven't been playing great ball in the last week or so, are sitting in prime position.
Yeah, dropping 2 out of 3 to the Phillies wasn't great, but we got 6 games against the Nats to close the season for the most part. So I don't know. That's the key with these teams. I'm always reminded of the Seattle Mariners, their 116 win team or whatever that cleaned house in the regular season and couldn't get it done in the playoffs. But the Braves of late have delivered in the playoffs, or at least are, totally different team than the one I grew up with, the team of the 90s. And I think they're going to do it again. They're looking sharp. They obviously own the long ball this year. It was great to see them live, take care of the Giants out in San Francisco. And yeah, we're going to get it done. And I think, yeah, that MVP race, we got it. Acuna's got it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, I totally agree. A couple of things on that. I did pick the Braves before the season started to win the World Series, but I told Will Smith 2 years ago after they won the World Series, I could see this Braves team winning 4 or 5 World Series over the next 9 or 10 years. They remind me a lot of the Yankees in '96, '98, '99, and 2000. I mean, they just have, and they got those guys locked up for years, and the pitching is young, and they've overcome injuries. So I'm with you. The Braves are my pick. I don't want anything to have to do with Milwaukee Brewers. The Brewers have 3 aces that they can start out there in Corbin Burns, and they have Peralta, and now Woodruff's getting healthy. So I would love to see them face off against the Dodgers and at least eliminate one each. And then on something you just touched on, you were able to see them. Look, it was such a treat for me last year to have the Buckeyes football team play in my backyard, so to speak, play in Atlanta in the semifinal. With you living out there, you don't get that many opportunities to come home. We wish you came home all the time. Thank you for coming home those times to appear in studio with me. But could you describe into words how much fun that was to see your guys right out there and performing right out there in front of you?
Yeah, well, there is a really beautiful stadium, honestly. There at Oracle Park, now Oracle Park. I think when it first opened, it was Pac Bell Park when Bonds went on those tears. Juiced up, of course. But I think yeah, it's a special thing. This is for sure a baseball town. It was when I first moved here. It's shifted to a Niners town with as much success as they've had of late, since they picked up great OC Kyle Shanahan, and he's become a head coach for the Niners. Seeing the Braves live is awesome. And there were a lot of Braves that showed up live too, similar to maybe not even as good as the way the Auburn Tigers showed up against Cal, which we'll get to later, on the West Coast. But is there anything better than going to an away game and wearing your team's gear and having them come away with a W? I don't think so.
And I just, of course, I pulled for the Braves in the National League, but I think their road gray uniforms are as good as a away uniform in baseball. The Cardinals with the birds actually on the bat, that's pretty nice too, and that's another gray form. But I think the Braves have a great look. I don't know what you wore. You're not one who wears many jerseys. I usually just prohibit myself to just wearing them either at my house or on the show. I mean, I don't want to be out in public and somebody come up and go like, "You got Marvin Harrison's jersey on, man. Why are you wearing? That's his jersey. Why are why are you wearing it?" But I will wear it on the show and at the house. And today, actually wearing another Ohio State wide receiver. So I don't know what your attire was, but the performance of the team was very good.
Brave shirt and hat, but I hate baseball away jerseys. I think gray
Ooh,
jerseys and uniforms are awful. So if you incorporate some color into them, that's
oh,
awesome.
what about the Cardinals? What I was talking about with the birds on the bat and the gray and their red. Stanford, okay, school right out there close to you in Palo Alto. Those gray uniforms they have with the Stanford written across or the Cardinal written across, those are gorgeous uniforms.
All right, the Stanford script I do like, but I have to ask you about this because this has become a trend as of the last few years, especially with guys like Acuna accessorizing so much. The yellow. How do you feel about Braves accenting with the yellow
No,
or
the
gold?
city, whatever they call the city uniforms or whatever, the Red Sox are all into doing that, like you're pointing out, the Mariners. I don't think it's a good look. I'd rather see a throwback uniform. I enjoy when the Braves wear their like 74, 75 version, the Hank Aaron days when you see those at home. Don't give me that. I mean, there's some great throwback uniforms. In fact, when the Patriots, I wasn't even going to watch the football game the other night between the Dolphins and the Patriots. But when I saw the Patriots wearing the throwback uniforms and that Pat the Patriot on the helmet, hiking the ball, which I think is the best helmet ever, I tuned in just to see those uniforms. To me, throwback stuff is better than the current stuff.
I don't know. For the NFL, I like the teams that don't change anything, honestly. They just set a good uniform and leave it. 49ers, good example. I don't think there's any better matchup than seeing 49ers. I think this is a week 5 matchup, 49ers against Cowboys. It's the perfect blend of on-field, one team against another and the way the colors look. But yeah, I don't know. I don't like the changing so much every time. And I don't like throwbacks at all, especially if they're wearing like a loose jersey to make it look like they're playing in the 1920s or 30s. I hate that. I just want to see like the tight jersey, regular colors, and give me the San Diego Chargers, the powder blues all day.
Okay, well, they had another form of powder blues that were throwback that were even cooler than the ones that you're referencing. You made a reference a little while ago to the Auburn crowd that was out in California. Before we talk any Ryder Cup, in which we want to get your Ryder Cup prediction, you've gone to the last 2 Cal football games, including seeing your alma mater, the Auburn Tigers. If you're new, you just discovering Bryan, you need to check out a podcast. It's an elite podcast, a Social Kick podcast. But he's an former Auburn Tiger and a U.S. record holder in the 50 meter butterfly for years and years and years until Caleb Dressel broke it. But he won a national championship every single year he was at Auburn on the team wise, plus several more individual ones. Bryan, what was that like to see those boys playing out in front of you and not having to go very far at all, and then seeing probably some old friends and a big Auburn crowd there?
Auburn showed out, but football games on the West Coast aren't anything like what an Auburn home game day is like, or anywhere in the SEC or the Southeast. They barely tailgate. All of the partying happens in bars. They didn't even fill the stadium. So, but a beautiful setting there at Cal. It's just a totally different atmosphere when you're used to the type of football that we see in the Southeast, where, college football is religion. You move to other areas of the country and you realize that most of their emphasis and fandom is on pro sports, or at least a bigger emphasis there. But they had a good atmosphere there, and walking around town in Berkeley before that game, I can't count the number of times that I heard fans of Cal exclaim, "Man, there are so many Auburn fans here," which made me feel good. And having seen the both back-to-back weeks, so I saw Auburn Cal pull out the win in a very ugly game, to be honest, on both sides of the ball, both sides, of the sidelines. Watched them play Idaho and played a heck of a lot better, especially as the sun came out through the day, but no Idaho fans in the stadium at all. And after the loss to Auburn the week prior, I think Cal's season hopes and their conference alignment hopes are dashed all the same.
Yeah, it makes sense, but it is a pretty campus-eyed, of course, with the Stanford-Cal rivalry. I side with Stanford. People know that I'm writing a fictional book about a baseball player who's from Noonan, Georgia, who goes on and plays at Stanford before playing in the minors, and eventually there's some Yankees and Braves interaction there of my 2 favorite teams. But that book will be out on opening day of baseball season next year. You can start thinking about the title. It's called 6 weeks this summer, 15 days in the fall. It's going to be, and Bryan Lundquist is actually a character in that book. He is a pitcher for the Atlanta Braves. So it's kind of a neat little twist there. You get to play for your hometown team, Bryan, because you're Lassiter High School. Well, I'm glad you got to see an Auburn victory. I got to say what I repeated on my last show. I haven't seen a team look so bad winning a football game in recent memory. Our only points in the first half were on an 11-yard drive after a turnover. We got away with the referees pausing play there for our first possession. It should have been a defensive touchdown for Cal. We're going to have to play a whole lot better to have an opportunity to pull off an upset in College Station.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Auburn against Texas A&M just seems to be a bit of a who cares bowl at this point. So, yeah, the unranked teams, I don't care about the spread and don't trust them when it comes to that. Anything over a touchdown, I hate. But, yeah, I don't see this team. I think this team's lucky to be 3-0 right now. I don't think anybody's misled by that 3-0. I think it's going to change here pretty soon, and I would assume that it's going to change this week.
I'm afraid that you're probably correct. We're going to break down a good bit of college football. The Solheim Cup is going on right now. Our ladies taking on Europe, and we're up 5-3 after day one over in Europe. Now our men have to face Europe next week. We've not done very well at all going over there to European soil. I have a feeling though this year we're going to win, and I have been picking Europe in the last 16 times that they played over in Europe. It's something about this American team, and of course I think a lot of Zach Johnson and his ability to put together a team. There's a little controversy there about taking former Alabama golfer Justin Thomas. But Justin Thomas played last week and contended right to the very end. I know that we all get patriotic in events like this, just like watching you compete on the international stage in swimming. We always pull for the Americans. What's your gut feeling tell you? Did we finally end the drought and win one over in Europe?
I think the American team is kind of a mixed bag of players who have had their career peak at different times. People like Spieth and Fowler, although Fowler had a good last, season, a nice resurrecting season for him. I just wonder if there's enough strength on this American team across the board to have consistent play in this type of format. So if we get the right version of Koepka, if we get the right version of Scotty Scheffler continues to play at his level, then I think the American team can pull it out. I don't think that there's a drastic imbalance of skill across the board, but I mean, they got to play away from home. Don't know much about this Rome golf course and what it's known for and how they anticipate it to play. So if it suits the strengths of some of these players, then then that'll give the American team the best chance. But I don't know. I'd say if I have to bet Europe at home, continue to stay on European soil, and this still is not the year for the American team.
The line is almost even. I mean, the Americans as of today are just a slight favorite. If it were a football game, they'd be favored by like 1.5 points. Interesting selection, and you brought it up there with the course there. Often you see it when the Europeans host, they've got 2 or 3 players from that native country who are like elite players, and I'm really glad this event's not, say, in Northern Ireland with the Rory McIlroy, in his backyard and all. Some of the Shane Lowry and some of those other players. I think that might help the U.S. some. The live whole aspect of that has changed things. I could see one day Spain and Sergio Garcia would have been the Ryder Cup captain and having won, and Barcelona or having something in Valencia, something like in his backyard. But there are no European live players on the European Ryder Cup team, and Koepka is the only player on either team. And it was hard to keep him off of it after finishing runner-up Augusta and winning the PGA. Dustin Johnson is, complaining about not being selected and saying that it's only because he played on Live. Well, you know what? Live is playing this weekend. I want to see Dustin Johnson make his point by winning that event, because Koepka won't win that event. I'm a Koepka fan, but Koepka won't take it serious enough, and he'll work on his game, as he likes to say, for next week. But the matchups will be interesting, and the relationship with Koepka and the PGA guys is pretty good, because he still plays with them where they live in Florida and still trains, and Johnson too, to a certain aspect. But I've heard a lot of the American players say they don't really have a problem. They don't have an issue with Brooks, and they're friendly with him. But I will be interested to see the pairings.
Yeah, well, I think you mentioned the live thing, and that to me is one of the more interesting dynamics. I'd love to know behind the scenes what some of the live players think about Rory, and if the way that he positioned his himself within that entire saga has, if they've mended fences, or if there was ever really a rift, or if that just existed in public. Because I don't know. To me, it came across like Rory was just kicking and screaming and complaining that whole time. I don't think it looked good upon him. But so if there's any conflict that arises on the course from that, I'd be surprised. They play together frequently, but well, yeah. So golf could use that drama though. I think any sort of drama or animosity. The gentleman's game needs a little bit more spice to it. So the more drama, the better, if there is any.
Well, I think we're headed for that if we get that merger. Which who knows what will happen there. I have mixed emotions about that. I am on target though with some talking some football with you this weekend, and you're a college football analyst for us. You're our West Coast correspondent. The Pac-12 doing phenomenal. It wasn't until Auburn beat California and Mississippi State beat Arizona, the Pac-12 had a clean sheet. They are, even though they're disbanding, their football is showing up this season, Bryan.
Yeah, but it's let's just call it ACC and Big Ten, shall we?
As we have said on this show before, nothing screams ACC like Stanford and Cal. That was John Perkinson's original, and it is sick. And we've gotten into how much all of us don't like to travel. And you were a swimmer, and your parents lived close enough to come when Auburn was home. You didn't have many home meets, but they could see you if you were a parent of a kid who was swimming for Rutgers. I mean, would you be able to get to Washington to see their swim meet at Washington? It's just not good. It's just not right.
Yeah, no, and I think that paints a good example of why it's not good. But as I've mentioned to you, I don't know if I have on the show, but I think that it's just going to come back together eventually. And I actually was talking with some of the Cal coaches in the past couple of weeks about this, whether or not it's going to impact non-revenue sports, and if so, how. And I think that it will impact the way that they schedule their season. Obviously, the schools are realigning because they're going to get more funding coming into their their athletic department budget. So from a budget standpoint, they should theoretically be able to cover it. But practically speaking, can the students attend class? Are they taking virtual class? I know that, in my era a long time ago, the teachers wouldn't necessarily be that, they wouldn't be that accepting of missing class or, rescheduling an exam or giving you the opportunity to what the student athletes need to accommodate some of these types of schedules. And I think that is going to be happening in the background and really going to be disruptive for these teams as they figure out what new life is like in the All Coast Conference.
Yes, we are student athletes first, after all. Danny Art was our guest last week. He's a college football analyst, and he had a 5-star selection. It did not work out. He went up against me, so he's 0-1 on the season with his 5-star selections. Bryan, he's got Florida State this week as his 5-star selection, favored by 2 on the road at Clemson. Here's my thing. I'm against him again because, and this is the only reason why, and I'm going to get your opinion. Florida State is ranked number 2 in some polls, 4 in some polls. They are going to Clemson, who is unranked, and the odds makers only have Florida State favored by 2. This is screaming trap to me. Like, they want you on Florida State, and Clemson's going to win the game outright. I'm going with the Clemson Tigers. That's not one of my personal selections, but I'm just opposite of Danny's 5-star this week.
Yeah. So 5-star, meaning he thinks that this out of any game that they're going to cover that spread.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. For me, the jury's still out on whether or not Florida State's good or was LSU terrible, because they looked amazing in week 1. But also on the flip side of that, is Duke legit or is Clemson not playing well? And I think actually the latter is true, is where I'm leaning, is that I think Duke is actually legit. And I think FSU might not be as good as they looked in week 1. And I think that there's a real test here for Clemson's identity as a program that's on the downslope, or are they protecting home turf? So I like Clemson as well in this one to defend home territory and maybe expose what the true identity of both teams are in this week.
And I just want to throw one other thing out there. I think the Florida State program probably feels like they're under the microscope as well. There's so much attention on Deion Sanders and Colorado. And the fact with his Florida State background, I would think there's pressure on the Florida State coaches, on the staff, and on the players to perform as well. Look, Colorado State was down eight as Colorado was down 8 to Colorado State with 2 minutes remaining in the fourth quarter as 23.5-point favorites, and we're lucky to push that game to overtime. I'm all for everybody being excited about Deion. I'm just not ready to say that they're. Well, first of all, we'll go right to this game. I think they're going to get blown out at Oregon. What your thoughts?
So I think without Travis Hunter, that it makes it extremely difficult for them to keep this game close. But I think the bigger glaring issue with Colorado is their line play. They looked awful on the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. And I think that when push came to shove, obviously with some penalties and injuries happening on Colorado State side that balanced the game a little bit more on their D line, not getting the penetration throughout the game, it opened things up downfield for Shedeur Sanders. So I think that helped get Colorado back into the game. I really don't like 20 plus point spreads though. And so I like Colorado to keep it under 3 touchdowns if the line stays at 21. If it sneaks under 20, I mean, I think Oregon's going to win the game. It's just a matter of Colorado getting some points on the board early. And, if they can do anything this week to have tougher line of scrimmage play.
I think people might want to look at the point total there and go over because I can see Colorado scoring, but I think they're going to have a hard time containing Oregon's offense. One that's in your part of the country, UCLA and Utah, both off to great starts. Utah is favored by 6. We saw what they did against Florida. It's a tough place to play, but they're giving UCLA a lot of respect with the spread here.
I like Utah to cover that at home. I think they just play strong at home, but and somehow they've been able to cover what most people expected to be some glaring absences with the injuries they've got. We still have Cam Rising and what's the tight end's name? That he's still out this week, or at least so far he's been out. I think it's still a question mark as to whether or not either of them plays this week. If either of them plays, certainly I like Utah even more. But yeah, this freshman quarterback from UCLA sure is playing great. So, and to be honest, I think it'd be good to see the Chip Kelly UCLA era start to do some things. I obviously
finally come to fruition.
I want that. I mean, as much as I liked our Auburn Tigers beating his Oregon Ducks in the national title game, I loved that. But man, I thought it'd be interesting for college football for Chip Kelly's teams to be playing well, much better than I like Bryan Kelly's teams to be playing well. So I'll root for Chip Kelly.
Okay. Let's go to a team that you don't traditionally root for in Tuscaloosa. This is one of Danny's picks also, and I was kind to him. Some markets have it 6.5, some markets have it 7. I said, all right, 6.5 is fine. He likes Alabama laying the 6.5 points. I am not comfortable with this game at all. Still haven't given out any of my official selections yet. How do you see it, Kiffin and Saban?
So I think that this is a real identity crisis for Alabama too. He's come back out and starting Milroe. I don't trust this Alabama team, but I do trust them to get it done at home. I think especially when they're being tested. So yeah, I don't like the line at 6.5 or 7. I'll take the points with Ole Miss covering that, or not getting beat by 6.5, 7. Jackson Dart looks pretty good so far this season. I think I could see this game playing out where, Kiffin and Ole Miss get out to, 14-0 in the first quarter. And then, maybe even a halftime lead. But I think as the game wears on, things will even out. And I see Alabama pulling it out. Unfortunately, I hate that pick, but I think it's what's going to happen.
All right. What about the team that you've just watched a couple of weeks in a row, Cal? They have to go to Washington. Penix, just phenomenal quarterbacks, having a great year. He was wonderful at Indiana when he played at Indiana. They're favored by 20.5, but you've gotten a good look at Cal. You probably have – you said you have some reservations about the big point spreads, but you can certainly understand why it's 20.5.
Yeah, I really don't like 20 plus point spreads, but Penix is legit and Cal I don't think is legit. And so and I've picked against Penix before when he had a big point spread at home. And yeah, for another team to cover, I don't remember who. It was last year, I think. And so I'm not gonna do that and repeat that mistake again. So I like Penix and UW to pull this one out big.
Let me release my first selection today. I'm wearing all my Ohio State stuff. Ohio State's 3-point favorites at Notre Dame. I never let the heart get in the way of anything. This is a big football game for Notre Dame, for Marcus Freeman, who played at Ohio State, the head coach of the Fighting Irish. They gave Ohio State problems last year. Notre Dame is better. Ohio State has not found its groove yet. They've got some defensive questions, and McCord hasn't played a huge game on the road. Yes, they won in Indiana, but that's not winning at South Bend. Ohio State people travel. There's no doubt about that. It won't be UGA like it was in the crowd 5 or 6 years ago, because Ohio State has played there 2 times in the last 30 years and won, by the way. Ohio State's done very well against Notre Dame, but I like Notre Dame in the 3 points. I'm praying that Ohio State can find a way to win that game, but Notre Dame is a well-coached football team, and I think that this is a big game. When they bring out those green jerseys, things happen. They're going to be wearing the green jerseys and all. The atmosphere is going to be electric. My first selection is Notre Dame plus the 3.
Yeah, this Notre Dame run game looks really good. And so I think if they can establish the run game and keep it, consistent throughout the game, barring any injuries, I like Notre Dame as well. I think they can take care of this one at home and really shake up the Big Ten race too if Ohio State takes one to the chin, early in the season. But I think I like Notre Dame. I like Notre Dame for the win. Honestly, at 3, I could see them winning by 3, and I think this game might be a push. I guess if I have to make one pick, then I'll take Notre Dame to cover the spread, but I could see it finishing at 3.
Okay, so for record purposes, I'm not going to discuss these games, but I'm going to release my 5 collegiate picks. I like Air Force minus 4.5 on the road. I like Toledo minus 21 at home. They didn't play real well last week. I look for them to rebound. I like Kansas against Brigham Young, and Kansas is favored by 9.5. And people are going like, "Did you see Brigham Young play Arkansas last week?" And I go like, "Yes, I did," but I still like Kansas minus the 9.5. I mentioned the Notre Dame plus 3. And then I'm taking Stanford. I'm going with my heart, even though something tells me Arizona is going to beat them 48-10. Stanford just doesn't do the name, image, and likeness. They don't do the transfer portal, not till this year. It's set them back some, and they don't have Shaw anymore. Those are mine. Yours, if I follow correctly, and I'm with you, by the way. I'm just not one of my official picks with Clemson, but I believe you said Clemson. You have all kind of trepidations with Auburn. Utah, you liked minus the 6. Kind of staying away from Colorado and Oregon because of the spread.
No. I'll take the points. So I like.
You'll take those 21. Okay, lose. Okay, you made a great point with Ole Miss and Alabama. You think Bama wins, but you like Ole Miss and those 6.5 points to cover. You agree with me with Notre Dame, and then the Cal Washington. You don't like those lines that big of a spread. I don't know if you actually are willing to say Washington or just stay away.
I'll take Washington to cover the 20.5.
Okay. Outside of the ones that I took on my special selections, Air Force, Toledo, Kansas, Stanford, and Notre Dame, which we do agree on, was there any other college football game that jumped out at you that you really liked spread-wise?
Oh, on the spot. I don't know. I need to go back and look at the schedule. What other games are missing?
Yeah, nothing like putting you on the spot. Let's go to the let me run down Danny's. Danny's 5 stars, Florida State minus the 2. Bryan and I are opposite of him on there. He likes Alabama minus 6.5. He likes Colorado plus 21. He and Bryan lose that one together. He likes Ohio State minus 3. And he likes Iowa plus 14.5 at Penn State. Iowa's got a great defense. Should be a lot of fun. Don't know if they can score many points against Penn State.
Yeah, so I'm just going back looking through some of these. I mean, so interesting games to me this weekend. Texas Baylor. I could see Baylor playing Texas well. especially at home? Do we know what the spread is on that game? The other things on my radar, this Florida Gators team, are they legit? Are they not legit?
They're legit. They're legit. Their defense is really good.
And then Tennessee. What's going on with Tennessee? Opening the
Uh,
season, everybody thought, "Hey, Joe Milton, cannon
no,
of an arm."
you didn't watch Talking with Tony last week when I gave out the Gators against the Balls. Not everybody was high on the Balls. So you need to go back and see that episode. Hey, let's transition to the NFL. We're up against time a little bit. I've got two selections in the NFL, the Detroit Lions against your Atlanta Falcons -3, and the Cincinnati Bengals on Monday night against the Rams, and a line that just keeps dropping. It was 6, then 4, now it's 3. All the money coming in on the other side. Give me the Bengals. There's a reason the casinos are out there for a purpose. It's because the house wins and not the bettors win. I'll let you pick Patriots and Jets, with the Patriots favored by 2.5 at New York.
I'll take the Pats. This Jets team is still crushed with Aaron Rodgers, and I just don't see their quarterback situation helping them in any way, especially against a Belichick coach team that still looks decent. So yeah, I'll take the Pats to cover -2.5 at New York.
You with me on Detroit -3 against your Falcons, or do you see them escaping there and maybe winning outright and being 3-0 this year? Atlanta, that is.
Absolutely not. Have you seen that overhead shot of Bijan Robinson, that sweet camera shot they got of his run and how he cuts? He looks amazing, and I love the Falcons with this run game they're establishing. I'm not sold on Dan Campbell and some of the gutsy calls that he makes, if he's a good game manager for the Lions or not. So even though the Lions, I think, could be legit, and I like him as a coach overall, he's made some questionable calls and they haven't backed him up. So I like the Falcons to pull one out.
Okay, we're opposite there. I'm on the Lions, and then I want you to pick Steelers and Raiders. Raiders by 2.5. And look, when I was a little thing, it was Terry Bradshaw versus Kenny Stabler. There were some iconic meetings between these two teams, and of course, everyone knows at the time that Franco Harris really did not catch the ball in the immaculate reception, but he got away with it. The only play in football history that was scored a touchdown that no official on the field ever raised their hands for a touchdown, but they gave it to him anyway. Steelers and Raiders this time out in Vegas, not Oakland or Los Angeles, but in Vegas. How do you see it?
Jimmy G Raiders. I think they're riding the Jimmy G train, and also I think that if they can shut down the Steelers, key to victory to me is Pickett to Pickens all day. Like, if they've got one of the best talents on the field, maybe the best, in George Pickens, I think he's that good. If they can run that and get him open and put some points up and have some consistency there, then great, they got a shot. But otherwise, I like Jimmy G and the Raiders.
Jake will tell us how many minutes we have here. Remember, I'm 10-5. We got about 5 minutes left, so we do have a little bit of time. I'm 10-5 against the spread this season. I'm off to a great start. My selections are Air Force -4.5, Toledo -21, Kansas -9.5, Stanford +13, even though in some markets you could even get more than +13. Notre Dame +3, but I'm pulling for the Buckeyes. Make no mistake there. And I like the Lions and the Bengals in the NFL, both favored by 3 points, even though all the money in the world is coming on against the Bengals in that game. Danny's 5-star, FSU -2. He's going to try to get to 1-1 on the season. He also likes Alabama -6.5, Colorado +21. Opposite of me, he likes Ohio State -3, and he likes Iowa +14.5. Bryan, we want to run those down. We'll even get Jake to post them up on the screen for you. He likes Clemson at home. I agree with him there. Clemson +2. We're both worried, let's just say that way, for the Auburn Tigers against Texas A&M. He's home up close and personal. Likes Utah against UCLA. Wants the points with Colorado, 21. And thinks Ole Miss covers the 6.5 or 7, if you can get that, against Alabama. Is with me with Notre Dame +3. And on Washington -20.5. In the NFL, Bryan likes the Patriots. Maybe Jake can find put the Patriots up there. Jake can find the old Pat the Patriot hiking the ball like they wore the jerseys that they wore on Monday night to put that logo up. Patriots are favored by 2.5. Bryan likes them. He likes the Falcons +3 against the Lions. and he likes the Raiders because he believes in Jimmy G. The Raiders -2.5. Maybe Daniel Carlson will kick a 61-yard field goal this weekend for the Raiders.
Man, have you been to that stadium yet? The Allegiant, it looks like a hockey puck there in Vegas. It's
I have
amazing.
not. I have not. Have you?
No, I haven't, but you got to go, especially on the next
Yeah.
Vegas trip. And by the way,
Yeah.
I think to these picks, you ought to add what your wagers are. That's where I feel like people would really benefit.
Well, I am. I'll say this: I'm heavy on Kansas. I think Brigham Young played a real physical game last week against Arkansas, and they did very well in Fayetteville. Back-to-back road trips, now going to Kansas. Kansas has an elite offense. Their defense is nothing spectacular themselves, but they have an elite offense. So I'm looking at Kansas pretty handsomely there. And I do believe in the Detroit Lions, though they have some injuries. I think they're going to win that division. I mean, I have a hard time saying it, but I believe they're going to win the division. That's a division that includes the Vikings and the Packers, and and the Packers are playing, very well. Lost to your Falcons, but they've been playing very well also.
Yeah, how do you feel about Desmond Ridder though? That's what I really want to know.
I'm not sold on Desmond Ridder yet, but that's probably a little unfair to him. He hasn't had much time. I mean, look, Mac Jones is still struggling with the Patriots. I mean, if Mac Jones just performs, look at Pickett. You just said the key for the Steelers, Pickett to Pickett. You're absolutely correct, but can Pickett get him the ball? I mean, when he threw the best pass of the night that he threw the other night, 70 yards and a touchdown, and helped them get really started against Cleveland because the defense was doing so much for them. So the quarterback, I won't come down too hard on quarterbacks. Bryce Young looks like he's having problems. Stroud was phenomenal on Sunday for the Texans, almost threw for 400 yards. But they still lost.
All right. And then your hometown Georgia boy there with Justin Fields. What's going on with him and the Bears, and him throwing some shade potentially, and lighting the grenade inside the locker room, saying that the coaching is the problem.
But then it was clean up on aisle 5, and he did a good He did a good job of that, and I think we're back to all hugging it out and being friends again. I can understand his frustration. He's a winner. He's always been a winner. He hasn't been a winner for the Bears, and boy, does it get harder this week having to face the Chiefs. I hope, if we have a minute remaining, I do hope, Bryan, that's a good competitive football game.
Yeah, I just want to see if it's true that if he can just play and not think as much about the game, his theory that that's what he needs to do. Certainly want that for him. I'm interested by some of these quarterbacks that just, based on their coaching or the team environment that they're in, their play can change around, as we're seeing Baker Mayfield play really well in Tampa, even though it's in division against the Falcons. Hate that. So rooting for him. Don't know if it's going to work.
Bryan, I want to thank you for taking the time and joining me here on Talking with Tony. Tune in next week. My guest will be Danny Arp.